The galaxy's Grand Technology Expo was a dazzling spectacle of lights, holograms, and the hum of advanced machinery. The event brought together the most powerful civilizations in the known universe, each eager to showcase their latest achievements. At the center of this year's contest stood the Zenval Empire, proud owners of the Celestial Dome, an unbreakable energy shield. This shield has withstood antimatter bombs, black hole simulations, and weapons beyond your comprehension, boasted High Commander Vrelix, his voice echoing through the vast arena. No weapon in the galaxy can break it. Among the audience, a small human delegation stood silently. They were newcomers to the interstellar stage, often dismissed as primitive by the galaxy's elite. But Captain James Carter, leader of the human team, didn't seem intimidated. His steely gaze rested on the shimmering shield. "I accept your challenge," Carter said, stepping forward. The crowd erupted into laughter. Vrelix smirked. "You barely left your solar system. What could you possibly offer?" Carter didn't flinch. "We don't need fancy technology. One shot from our weapon will do." The audience jeered, but the Zenval loved a spectacle. Vrelix waved a hand, signaling the acceptance of the challenge. "Very well, human. You have one chance." Back at the human delegation station, Carter's team worked quickly. Their weapon was simple by galactic standards, a railgun, a device that used electromagnetic forces to launch a solid projectile at extreme speeds. The projectile was a dense tungsten slug, no bigger than a fist, but engineered for one purpose, to unleash pure kinetic energy. "Are you sure about this, Captain?" asked Dr. Elena Ross, the team's lead engineer. Carter grinned. "It's not about how advanced we are. It's about understanding the basics and using them well." The team transported their weapon to the firing platform. The sleek, metallic railgun looked out of place among the alien energy cannons and antimatter launchers displayed nearby. Observers sneered, calling it a toy. The arena fell silent as Carter took his position behind the weapon. The celestial dome shimmered like a giant crystal bubble, its energy field pulsing with power. Carter adjusted the railgun's aim, his movements calm and precise. "Ready," he announced. Vrelix leaned back in his chair, his expression smug. "Fire whenever you're ready, human. Try not to embarrass yourself too much." Carter pressed the trigger. The railgun emitted a sharp crack as the tungsten slug launched at incredible speed, leaving a faint trail of ionized air behind it. The projectile was nearly invisible, traveling faster than the eye could follow. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening roar, the slug struck the celestial dome. The shield rippled, its shimmering surface distorting as energy waves collided within. A blinding flash of light erupted, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. When the light faded, the arena gasped. The celestial dome was gone. The tungsten slug had punched straight through the shield, leaving only faint sparks where the energy barrier once stood. Silence hung in the air before chaos erupted. Spectators shouted in disbelief. Engineers scrambled to analyze what had just happened. Vrelix stood frozen, his face pale. This is impossible," he stammered. "No weapon can." Carter stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "You relied on complexity. We relied on simplicity and physics. That's the human way." Dr. Ross joined him, holding up a tablet displaying their calculations. "Your shield was strong, but it wasn't perfect. We calculated its energy distribution and found a weak point. All it took was one well-placed shot with enough kinetic energy." The Zenval's smug confidence crumbled. The galaxy's most powerful civilizations had been humbled by a so-called primitive species. The event became the talk of the galaxy. News spread of humanity's triumph, and suddenly, the once-ignored species was at the center of attention. Other civilizations approached Earth, not with mockery, but with respect. As Carter and his team packed up their railgun, a young alien engineer approached. "Captain," he said hesitantly, "how did you know it would work?" Carter smiled. "Sometimes, the simplest tools are the most powerful when used right." The alien nodded, his eyes wide with admiration. As he walked away, Carter turned to his team. "This is just the beginning," he said. "The The galaxy doesn't know what humans are capable of yet. And with that, Earth's rise among the stars had begun, one primitive shot at a time. The Galactic Union's Grand Council chamber was alive with tension. Representatives of hundreds of advanced species had gathered to witness a spectacle, a challenge that would decide humanity's fate. Earth, the newest member of the galactic community, was given an impossible task: break the strongest shield in the galaxy, or remain a second-class civilization, stripped of respect and resources. Standing at the center of the chamber was Dr. Elena Ross, a young but brilliant human physicist. Her calm demeanor masked the pressure she felt. Behind her was Earth's contribution to the challenge, a long, unassuming railgun mounted on a swiveling platform. "Is this it?" sneered Gornak, a towering alien from the Zorith Empire. "A primitive slug thrower? Pathetic." The Galactic Union's council leader, an imposing figure named Harvos, raised his hand. "Silence. Earth has chosen their weapon. Let them proceed." Elena didn't rise to the insults. She simply adjusted her glasses and began calibrating the railgun. Her voice was steady as she spoke to her team. "Focus. They think we're primitive. Let's show them how wrong they are." The target was the Eternal Bastion, a shield created by the Krelvan Dominion, widely regarded as the strongest defense in the galaxy. It had survived supernova-level blasts and attacks from the most advanced energy weapons. The shimmering barrier hovered in the center of the chamber, its golden glow a symbol of Krelvan's superiority. As the humans prepared their weapon, the spectators whispered among themselves. Most expected Earth to fail. How could a simple projectile, a solid piece of tungsten, stand a chance against such a marvel of engineering? Elena's second-in-command, Lieutenant Sam Carter, stood by her side. "You sure this will work, Doc?" he asked quietly. "It's not about complexity," Elena replied. "The Krelvans built a shield to stop advanced energy weapons, but they didn't design it for pure, raw force. Physics doesn't care how advanced you are." Sam nodded, his confidence bolstered by her certainty. When the railgun was ready, Elena turned to the council leader. "We are prepared to fire." Harvos gestured for the trial to begin. "Earth, you may proceed." Elena took a deep breath and entered the final commands. The railgun hummed as power surged through its electromagnetic coils. The tungsten slug, dense and simple, locked into position. Firing in 3-2-1 with a deafening crack, the slug launched from the railgun, leaving a streak of ionized air in its wake. The projectile hurtled toward the shield at a fraction of light speed, faster than anything most aliens had ever seen. The slug collided with the shield, and for a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The Eternal Bastion's surface rippled like water. Then, with a thunderous explosion, the shield shattered. The golden energy dissolved into sparks, and the room was plunged into stunned silence. The unthinkable had happened. The strongest shield in the galaxy had been destroyed by a primitive weapon. The chamber erupted into chaos. Some aliens shouted in disbelief, while others scrambled to analyze the data. Harvos slammed his staff against the floor, demanding order. "How?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "How did a simple projectile succeed where the most advanced weapons failed?" Elena stepped forward, calm and composed. "The Eternal Bastion is designed to absorb and redirect energy-based attacks. Lasers, plasma, antimatter, it can handle all of them. But it wasn't prepared for a kinetic impact of this magnitude. Our railgun fired a dense slug with enough speed to deliver unimaginable force to a single point. The shield's defenses couldn't compensate, and it collapsed." The explanation left the council speechless. For centuries, the galactic elite had dismissed humanity as backward, but this one moment had turned the tide. Gornak, who had mocked Elena earlier, now looked at her with newfound respect. "You've proven your point, human," he said grudgingly. "Your species is resourceful." Elena smiled faintly. "We don't rely on fancy technology. We focus on the basics and find ways to make them work better than anyone else." As the humans began dismantling their railgun, Sam leaned over to Elena. "You think they'll stop calling us primitive now?" "Maybe," Elena replied, "but it doesn't matter. Today, we earned our place in the galaxy." The story of the slug that broke the sky spread across the stars like wildfire. For the first time, humanity was taken seriously, not as a primitive species, but as a clever and determined one. Back on Earth, Elena stood before a cheering crowd of her people. She held up a small model of the Railgun, a symbol of their victory. "We may not have the most advanced technology," she said, "but we have something better, the courage to face impossible odds and the intelligence to find a way through." The cheers grew louder, and in that moment, humanity's future among the stars was no longer in doubt. They had proved they belonged, one slug at a time. The Galactic Assembly Hall was buzzing with anticipation. Representatives from dozens of advanced species filled the chamber, their holographic displays shimmering with data. Today, the Varnax Coalition was hosting its annual technological challenge, an event meant to show off their unbreakable shield technology. The Varnax shield, an energy barrier powered by an artificial black hole, was known as the most advanced defense system in the galaxy. It had stood firm against antimatter bombs, gravitational disruptors, and even simulated supernovas. To challenge it was to invite certain failure. Standing in the center of the hall was Commander Sarah Hayes of Earth. Behind her stood a small team of engineers and soldiers, and beside them was their weapon of choice, a railgun. Its metallic frame gleamed under the bright lights, but compared to the alien devices around it, the railgun looked crude and unsophisticated. The Varnax host, a towering figure named Carol Zinn, looked at Sarah with disdain. "Humans," he said, his voice laced with mockery, "you are welcome to try. But your primitive weapon will fail, as all others have." Sarah remained calm. "We'll see," she replied simply. Earth's weapon was a tungsten projectile, a dense metal rod designed to be fired at near light speed. It wasn't flashy, and it didn't use advanced energy systems. Instead, it relied on raw kinetic energy, the kind of force that no shield, no matter how advanced, could ignore. As the humans prepared their weapon, the crowd of alien spectators whispered and laughed. "A slug thrower?" One alien scoffed. "Is this a joke?" Sarah's second-in-command, Lieutenant Mark Chen, adjusted the railgun settings. "Commander," he said quietly, "are you sure this will work?" "They're using black hole tech, for crying out loud." Sarah gave him a reassuring nod. "It's not about matching their technology," she said. "It's about finding their weakness. Every shield has one." The challenge began. The massive shield generator was activated, and a glowing, translucent barrier appeared in the center of the arena. The Varnax shield pulsed with golden light, its energy swirling like a living thing. "Whenever you're ready," Carol said, smirking. Sarah's team finalized their calculations. The railgun was aimed directly at the shield, its targeting system locked onto a critical spot the humans had identified through weeks of analysis. Firing in 3, 2, 1, the railgun roared to life, releasing the tungsten slug with a thunderous crack. The projectile traveled so fast that it became invisible, a blur of deadly precision hurtling toward the shield. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a deafening explosion, the shield shattered. The golden energy dispersed into 1,000 sparks, and the once impenetrable barrier was no more. The chamber fell silent. The spectators, who had been so confident in the shield's invincibility, were now speechless. Carol Zinn stared at the empty space where the shield had been, his expression a mix of shock and disbelief. This cannot be!" Carol shouted. "No weapon can break the Varnax shield." Sarah stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Your shield was powerful, but it wasn't perfect. Our projectile exploited its frequency harmonics, delivering kinetic energy at a point your defenses couldn't compensate for. Simple physics." The aliens around her began to murmur, their arrogance replaced by a grudging respect. The humans had achieved what no other species could. As Sarah and her team packed up their railgun, an alien engineer approached. He was small and nervous, his large eyes filled with curiosity. "Excuse me," he said hesitantly, "but how did you know it would work?" Sarah smiled. "We studied your shield. It's designed to handle energy-based attacks, but physical impact? That's a whole different game. You see, humans don't just build advanced tech, we figure out how to use what we have in the smartest way possible." The engineer nodded slowly, his awe evident. The event made headlines across the galaxy. News networks broadcasted the story of how a primitive human weapon had defeated the most advanced shield ever created. The phrase, "primitive no more," became a rallying cry for humanity, symbolizing their rise as a respected force in the galaxy. Back on Earth, Sarah stood before a cheering crowd. "Today, we showed the galaxy that simplicity isn't weakness," she said. "It's a strength. And when you combine simplicity with ingenuity, there's nothing we can't achieve." The crowd erupted into applause, their pride in humanity shining bright in the days that followed. Alien diplomats began approaching Earth, not with insults, but with offers of alliances and trade. The galaxy's view of humanity had changed forever. What once was seen as primitive was now admired as brilliant and resourceful. And so, Earth's journey among the stars continued, not as underdogs, but as equals. The Galactic Shielding Challenge was the highlight of the year for advanced civilizations across the stars. Held on the massive neutral station known as Nexus Prime, it was a spectacle where the most powerful technologies were put to the test. Only one goal mattered: breaking the galaxy's strongest shield. Earth, a relatively new entrant to the galactic community, was allowed to participate for the first time. Many species questioned why the humans even bothered. The Vrex Dominion, the reigning champions, laughed openly at the sight of Earth's weapon, a railgun mounted on a simple, rugged platform. Jack Monroe, Earth's lead engineer, stood by the weapon, calmly adjusting its controls. A former soldier and now an engineer, Jack was known for his unshakable focus. Beside him, the Vrex team displayed their gleaming energy cannons and antimatter missiles, all powered by exotic technologies Earth hadn't even begun to understand. They brought a railgun. One Vrex engineer sneered. "What's next? A slingshot." The crowd of alien spectators burst into laughter, but Jack ignored them. He glanced at his assistant, Claire Steele, who was busy running last-minute checks. "Everything ready?" Jack asked. "Ready," Clara replied, though her voice carried a hint of nervousness. "But, Jack, are you sure this will work?" Jack grinned. "They think we're weak because we're simple. That's their first mistake." The target was the Dominion Shield, a shimmering dome of energy that stood at the center of the arena. It was considered indestructible, powered by an array of black hole generators and capable of withstanding even planet-destroying weapons. The first competitors were the Zorth Consortium, a species known for their technological finesse. Their energy lance struck the shield with a flash of light, but barely made it ripple. Next came the Lyrith Alliance, wielding a gravitational disruptor. The arena trembled as they fired, but the shield remained intact. Finally, it was Earth's turn. Jack and Claire wheeled their railgun into position. The weapon looked almost laughable compared to the futuristic devices that had come before. The Vrex captain, a towering alien named Draven, leaned forward with a mocking grin. "Go ahead, human," he taunted. "Entertain us." Jack ignored the jeers and focused on the railgun's controls. Clara whispered. The railgun hummed as its coils charged with electromagnetic energy. A dense tungsten slug was loaded into the firing chamber, and the weapon locked onto the shield. "Fire when ready," the announcer declared. Jack didn't hesitate. He pressed the trigger, and the railgun fired with a sharp, metallic crack. The tungsten slug shot forward, invisible to the naked eye as it traveled at an incredible speed. For a heartbeat, the arena was silent. Then, the projectile hit the shield. The impact created a shockwave so powerful that the entire station shuddered. The shimmering dome rippled violently before a deafening explosion shattered it into a cascade of golden sparks. The Dominion shield was destroyed. The crowd erupted in chaos. Gasps, shouts, and stunned silence filled the arena as spectators tried to process what had just happened. The Vrex team stared in disbelief, their arrogance melting away. "This is impossible," Draven bellowed. "Our shield is invincible." Jack calmly stepped forward. "Not invincible," he said, his voice steady. "Just untested against the right kind of force." Claire held up a tablet displaying their calculation. "Your shield was designed to withstand energy-based attacks, lasers, antimatter, even gravity weapons. But it wasn't optimized for raw kinetic energy." Our slug concentrated all its force into a single, focused impact. Draven's jaw clenched, but he couldn't argue with the data. The victory was a turning point. Earth, once seen as an underdog with outdated technology, had just bested the galaxy's strongest defense system. Alien engineers flocked to Jack and Clara, eager to understand how such a simple weapon could achieve the impossible. Back at their station, Clara exhaled deeply. "We actually did it," she said, still in disbelief. Jack smirked. "Never underestimate the underdog," he said. "Sometimes, being underestimated is the biggest advantage." News of Earth's triumph spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy, species began to see humans in a new light, not as primitives, but as resourceful innovators who could achieve greatness with limited tools. Jack and Clara became symbols of humanity's ingenuity, and the phrase "the underdog strike" became a legend. For the first time, Earth was seen not as a backwater planet, but as a force to be reckoned with. And as Jack prepared for the next challenge, he knew one thing for sure: humanity's journey among the stars was just beginning.